Without further ado, we'd like to introduce you to Sherry Griffiths, who will be doing the welcome and introduction. Thank you.
Thanks, Keisha. Appreciate that. And welcome and thank you to everyone for joining us today. My name is Sherry Griffiths, and I'm the SVP and Head of Ontario for Canadian Commercial Banking. And I'm also fortunate to be a sponsor for our BMO for Women team, including my colleague, Lisa Milburn, who you will hear more today. I'm really pleased to welcome everyone. And we have a great event lined up for you with a short presentation on elevating your board effectiveness, followed by a panel of accomplished directors. First, I'd like to acknowledge that the land that we are actually meeting on today, for many millennia, this has been a traditional territory of our Indigenous nations. And I just want to take a moment because I'm actually sitting today in Nashville, Tennessee. And so I'm actually here for a board meeting, funny enough. So, but I did want to acknowledge the land that I'm sitting on presently, which includes the Choctaw, the Chickasaw, and the Creek peoples. But we also have many folks that are attending from across Canada. So I do want to honor and recognize the First Peoples in each of our territories and the ongoing contributions of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples to the vibrancy of the community today. We are really grateful for the opportunity to live and work together on the land. At BMO, we have a rich history of supporting women. The BMO for Women program was established to create a dedicated team who work on initiatives and resources to support and advance women. Our commitment is fueled by our purpose to boldly grow the good in business and life with initiatives like BMO Celebrating Women Grant Program, where we will be awarding 26 women business owners across Canada and the US with grant money for their business. We also are excited around initiatives for the launch of our Women in Leadership Fund, which was the first impact investing fund in Canada that invests in companies with at least 25% women on their board or a female CEO. We also partner with organizations that provide support for women, and we're really proud to be a national strategic partner with Women Get On Board. I'd like to introduce our first speaker today, Deborah Rosati, who is the founder and CEO of Women Get On Board. Women Get On Board is a 700+ member-based social purpose company that connects, promotes, and empowers women to corporate boards. Deborah is an accomplished corporate director, entrepreneur, fellow chartered professional accountant, and certified corporate director. She has over 35 years of high growth and transformational leadership experience in the technology, consumer, retail, cannabis, life sciences, private equity, and venture capital industry sectors. Her work ethic is fueled by her passion. She is a steadfast champion of business, corporate governance, and board diversity through her board leadership and advocacy for her social purpose company to get more women on boards. I will turn it over to Deborah, who will share her insights on elevating your board effectiveness. Please join me in welcoming Deborah.
Thank you, Sherry. And it is a pleasure to be here. It is a pleasure to have BMO as our national strategic partner. And what a delight. I don't know where you're residing today, but I'm in Halifax and it is a gorgeous sunny day on the East Coast. So welcome all. I am really pleasure to be speaking today on an ebook that I published last year called Elevating Your Board Effectiveness. And it really came through my personal experiences and observations as serving as a corporate director for the last 2 decades. The areas that I felt that as women, we can be more confident in the boardroom are, and where we can add value and add our superpowers are finding your voice in the boardroom and using your emotional intelligence. So let's get started. So finding your voice. I'm going to speak to you today. If you can go to the next slide, please. I'm going to talk to you about the 4 Ps, as I like to say, in finding your voice. You have a purpose, you have a passion, you have a presence, and you have power. And we'll talk about those 4 Ps in ways in which you can find your voice. And these are through my own personal experiences and observations. And some of them I've learned along the way. And so this is really experiences that I want to share with you, each and every one of you, because as women leaders, we deserve to be at the boardroom table. And if we can show up with our 4 Ps, we'll be better and have more power and presence there. So let's get started. The first P will be purpose. And yes, This is from your own CEO at BMO. Leading with purpose drives meaningful impact and inspires us all to aim higher. I like to think of purpose is definitely bigger than oneself. And as it's been mentioned earlier, Women Get On Board is my social purpose company. It is to connect, promote, and empower women to corporate boards. That is my social purpose. One more woman on a board, one board at a time. So purpose is really how you show up and how you advance your career. So, you know, you have to have a purpose of why you want to be on a board. And if you are serving on a board, it can be an incredibly rewarding experience and can be a really great way to advance your career. And some of the benefits that you can gain from serving on boards is you can build your personal network, you can build your own brand, you can give back to organizations that have a meaningful purpose for you, you can learn different perspectives and apply them to your existing role. You can develop your governance leadership skills, and you can get access to knowledge, skills, perspectives, management styles, cultures, business models, mentors, and connections. So your purpose is a reason for serving on boards. And so think about that each and every time you're thinking about joining a board or in your very own journey at the beginning is what is your purpose? Let's go to the next P. The next P is your presence. Presence is how you show up. My advice on presence is to stand up for what you believe in. That means forming a clear opinion, a point of view, and most importantly, never feeling pressured to make a board decision that you agree with or disagree. Make sure you show up with your own voice and your presence. And it's important to remember that the board selected you to be on that board because of your expertise, your skills, your strategic insight, and your leadership track record. So if something doesn't feel right after hearing your board colleagues deliberate around a boardroom table, make sure you stand behind your instincts. There's no lesser way of demonstrating your value than by following someone else and you know, staying quiet on a matter. Even if it means you have to fall down and pick yourself back up, put yourself out there, make yourself visible, and be fearless. Moving on to the next P, it's your passion. Passion is the reason why you care about the board you're serving on. When you bring your true passion to the board you're serving on, it elevates your voice and it's contagious. Suddenly, the whole board has higher enthusiasm and excitement for their work. One example of my board career where my passion really did show up was I had gone for an interview at the National Ballet School Board. And the question they asked me is, why did I want to be a member of their board? And I said, I love ballet ever since I was a little girl. And I know I would bring value from a governance and financial expertise. So that, I think they had nothing further to say. My passion came out loud and clear. Needless to say, I did join that board and I was very passionate about the work they did. When it comes to elevating your board effectiveness, finding your voice in the boardroom, reflect on why you chose or why you choose to serve on a board. Remember your passion and bring it to the boardroom. Passion is why you show up and what you stand for. Let's go to the next P. Next P is power. Your power is how you affect meaningful change. It's your belief in your ability to lead, influence decisions, and lean in when you need to get things done. In my experience, there are 3 stages for women stepping into power. There's leaning in, there's learning up, and there's sponsoring others. Many women have difficulty in leaning into their power. And how can you change this? The concept of leaning in means being assertive and moving towards leadership role rather than a follower's role. Imagine a roundtable discussion. The most active participants, this is when we were in person, are the ones that are physically leaning in, leaning forward into the table and discussion, while those who are taking a back seat and a little bit more passive are distance positioned from the boardroom. How does one lean into the boardroom? Start by taking a leadership role on a particular topic, an issue of governance, process, or an area of specialty expertise. For instance, I was asked to lean in on a due diligence process as part of an M&A transaction. As you might, you may lean in as a chair of a nominating corporate governance committee where you have an opportunity to lead the process to review directors' compensation, to do directors' evaluation, to do a board renewal. So there's different ways that you can lean in from a board perspective. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in a specific board committee. You may find times where outside of the boardroom, you may seize an opportunity to lean in. So the next area is learning up. Learning up, power is knowledge. So if we can just go to the previous slide, I'm still on my final power slide. And learning up is really, it should be a continuous improvement. When you're in the boardroom, there's continuous learning about the industry, the business, governance knowledge, and keeping current and everything. And that really can enable you and give you power in the boardroom. And the last one is sponsoring others. Once you have a seat in the boardroom table, you can work to enhance and amplify other women's power. And a sponsor is a person who has the power and will use it for you and will speak about you when you're not there. And remember, sponsorship or a sponsor is someone, it's a two-way relationship. So you have to build that relationship. I've had amazing sponsors over the years, and I've sponsored others. And it's not a natural thing. You can't expect someone to be a sponsor. It's something that you earn over time. So remember, it's a two-way. And I hope, if nothing else from this conversation, you find a sponsor or you sponsor someone else. We can all help each other get to the boardroom. So those are the 4 Ps that I want to finish up with. It's your purpose, it's your presence, it's your passion, it's your power. And if you can lead with these, it will give you the courage to lead and serve and confidence in your leadership roles in the boardroom. So now let's move on to our emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is really your EQ, your soft skills. And this is a topic that's not really talked about much in the boardroom. And in my decades of board experience, I've observed some of the best behaviors and some of the worst behaviors. I've observed that emotional intelligence in one of the most important and is one of the least discussed boardroom skills. So what is emotional intelligence? According to Daniel Goldman, an American psychologist who has popularized this concept, emotional intelligence is the ability to understand and manage your emotions and those of people around you. And I can tell you, every time I have an emotional moment, I think better. I think, how could I have done that better? How could I have said that? So I'm always, course correcting my own emotional intelligence, but it's being self-aware and leaning in to do better for sure. So as we move forward, let's go to the next slide. Emotional intelligence, I like to say, sum it up with 4 C's: your competency, your character, your courage, and your chemistry. And I think if you embrace these 4 C's, will make you more effective in your boardroom. So let's start with the first, competency, emotional intelligence. Next slide, please. Technical competency. That's an area where that's really what is on your CV. That is your hard skills. That's your unique value proposition. That is what makes you unique. And that is what you bring technically to a board. And I like to have an elevator pitch that talks about sort of at a high level. If someone said, what do you do? Or what do you bring to a board? I like to say I have entrepreneurial, financial, and governance expertise with high growth transformational companies in technology, retail, consumer, and life sciences. Understanding your technical competency is essential for your emotional intelligence because it helps you understand what you know and where you need to rely on others. And the next area of competency is your social competency, is really your social skills, your ability to listen, to observe, to be self-aware of others. And by putting self-awareness into action, there will be times where you already know the answer to a discussion. However, exercising the skill is being conscious of biases, stepping back and considering the subject matter with neutrality. Let's go to our next C. Character. Character, I love this one. Knowledge will give you power, but character will give you respect. And once you've developed your foundation, you've used your social competency, your self-awareness, and self-regulation to help you demonstrate your character. In a recent article published by an executive search firm, there was a very prominent board member. Her name is Victoria Reese, and she urged board members to listen first. You should be the last to speak. Listen empathetically, solicit other points of view, and be most prepared, even though you may talk the least. The added benefit of showing good character is embracing opinions of others, and it leads to better results. I've demonstrated my, in the past, character in the boardroom. So for instance, in 2015, I know a lot of you have heard the story, but it was definitely character that got me through. I set out for a board interview, and I was really, really prepared. And my first interview was going to be with the CEO. And the CEO opened the conversation for the interview with saying, hey, you know, he didn't say hey, but basically he started the conversation with, you know, I'm not interviewing you because you're a woman. And I thought after 15 years of being on boards, that was not a good opener for me. So I paused, I reflected on how do I move forward? And my character drove me forward, because what I said to him was, you know, I'm not here because I'm a woman. I'm here because I can add value to your board. So let's talk about your strategy. So I had a 2-hour strategy conversation with that CEO, and I did prepare for the board interview. But I knew at that moment in that time that that would not be the right fit for me as far as the board goes and as far as culture goes. So I just wanted to highlight that was my character. I didn't back away. I came prepared, but in my mind, it was not going to be the right fit. And let's go to the next C, courage. Courage has two important parts of courage. There's motivation and there's empathy. Motivation is described as your commitment to lean in, why you're motivated and why you're there. And that helps drive your courage. Your empathy is, you know, at your ability to sense other feelings and how they see things. And I will give you an example of a courage that I wish I had courage on this particular board situation I had. I was chair of an audit committee, and one of my audit committee members had fallen asleep in the boardroom. And all I could think of for myself was how annoying that was. How could he do that? Why doesn't he sleep at home? And, you know, so we very quietly and diplomatically kind of tapped him on the shoulder and asked him if he wanted a coffee. And at that moment, I wish I had had the courage to follow up with them after the meeting to say, hey, is everything okay? I would have been a lot more empathetic. As it turned out, he had health issues. And, you know, to this very day, it was a huge learning for me that I should have had the courage to reach out to him after the meeting and ask him how he's feeling. His health actually declined from there on and did not come back to any of our meetings thereafter. He passed away. So he was dealing with some health issues, and I could have been more empathetic. And I wanted to share that story with you because I did not have the courage. I was putting my own feelings first. And I think if we can lean in and be more empathetic, I think we would have better understandings of each other. And then let's move to the last C, chemistry. Chemistry is really that uniqueness that really brings people together. And, you know, it's really the social skill around the boardroom table. It's the ability to manage and influence others' emotions effectively. You can really have chemistry, and there are times where you don't have chemistry. And what I like to think of is for board meetings, it really has 3 phases. There's before the meeting, there's during the meeting, and there's after the meeting. And at all 3 stages of these meetings, is you can develop chemistry, you can develop trust. Maybe you feel more comfortable having conversations in advance of a matter. You know, maybe you go in camera, or maybe you deal with situations after. But that chemistry really comes from trust, showing up, and believing in each other. And I've seen some really effective boardroom behaviors where chemistry was there. I've seen them where the chemistry wasn't there and people weren't listening to each other. So I like to end in saying that if you are building and developing your emotional intelligence, one of the most important and challenging tasks you can undertake in your board career is embracing your emotional intelligence. And we talked today about the 4 C's: competency, character, courage, and chemistry. And you'll be able to advance your board journey and elevate your board effectiveness if you can show up with those 4 C's. So before I turn it over to our esteemed panelist and our moderator to talk about how they elevate their board effectiveness, I just want to close and say that in my 35 years of entrepreneurial, financial, and governance experience, I've learned that it's not enough to just take a seat at the table. You have to show up, serve, and consistently elevate your board effectiveness. And in the ebook that you will all get a complimentary copy, it will reinforce the 4 P's and the 4 C's of the 4 P's of finding your voice in the boardroom, and the 4 C's of finding your emotional intelligence in the boardroom. Hopefully it will empower you to bring you yourself to be more effective in the boardroom. And I just want to take a moment and thank you all for your time and your interest, for showing up. We've had a really good turnout for the session, and I'm really excited now to turn it over to our panelists. But before we do, I want to introduce our moderator. Our moderator today is Lisa Milburn. She's the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer at BMO Wealth Management and the executive sponsor for BMO for Women with her colleague, Sherry Griffiths. Lisa joined BMO Financial Group in 2008 as Vice President Corporate Communications. In 2014, she was promoted to Chief Administration Officer, the Canadian Personal and Commercial Banking and North American channels. After 2 years in that role, she transitioned over to the Wealth Management Group and was promoted to the COO for BMO Insurance. Lisa is an authentic and proven leader with a reputation for developing and executing strategies and building high-performance teams. She is a member of the bank's Senior Leadership Council, as well as the Leadership Committee for Diversity, Inclusion, and Equity. She serves as a board director for the IFSC Institute and is an active volunteer in support of the annual BMO Employee Giving Campaign, Walk so kids can talk, in support of Kids Help Phone. So without further ado, Lisa, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deborah, for your introduction and that incredible presentation. The 4 Ps, the 4 Cs, I think it's just such a great practical guide to think about not only how you're showing up and evaluating potential board opportunities, but also making sure the litmus test of boards that you are on, should you stay on them? How should you get involved in more? And are you on the right one? So I know I cherish the book, and I know all of you, as you get your copy of the ebook, will be excited to look at it and really internalize what the P's and the C's mean for you. So I'm absolutely thrilled and looking forward to moderating today's panel. I've been excited about this for weeks since Deborah asked me to do it. We really, really value our partnership with Get On Board, and we all want more women on more boards, full stop. So let me start by introducing our incredible panelists today. And I'm going to take my time because they are incredible accomplishments, and I want to make sure that we really, really give them pure justice so that you understand who's behind and what these incredible women have accomplished. So first, Fatanah Chasley. She is the co-founder and chief creative officer of We Us Them. This is a full-service ad agency with a powerful client roster that includes companies like TELUS, the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, the Canadian Space Agency, Government of Canada, the Competency Group, Kaplan International, Cambridge University, and the Sinai Health System, just to name a few in terms of the client roster. She was named to Canada's top 100 most powerful women by WXN, not once, but twice. And this year, she was also named to Atlantic Canada's top 25 most powerful women in business, and a 1 of 5 honorees nationally for her work in the community and in leadership roles by Women Get On Board. I'm not done. She's also been named Executive of the Year and most recently Entrepreneur of the Year in Canada. And Fatanah has also been named one of 5 women of inspiration, a woman of influence, a woman of excellence, and a diva of color, my personal favorite, to be celebrated in the UK later this year. Now, from a board perspective, she serves on boards of Efficiency One as vice chair of the Chamber of Commerce and has been on the boards of the Mental Health Foundation, the Canadian Cancer Society, and a governing council at the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design University. So welcome to you. Our second panelist is Norma Beauchamp. If you have not met Norma, she is a corporate director with over 30 years of healthcare experience in corporate and nonprofit organizations, including executive positions at Bear Healthcare, both in Canada and globally, and Sanofi Canada as well. Most recently, though, she served as the president and CEO of Cystic Fibrosis Canada from 2014 to 2017. And throughout her career, she has been a patient advocate, working with patient and healthcare organizations to enhance access to care. From a board perspective, let's get that out there. Norma currently serves on the respective boards of Extendicare, Aurora Cannabis Inc., as chair of its Nominating and Corporate Governance Committee and member of its Human Resources and Compensation Committee, as well as Dialogue Health Technologies Inc., a leading Canadian telehealth service, and lastly, HLS Therapeutics Inc. She gives back to her community and she serves as a member of the National Research Council of Canada and on the respective boards of the Ontario Caregiver Organization and ALS Canada. She's a regional ambassador with Women Get On Board, where she connects with women aspiring to serve on boards, like all of you online listening today. So, two incredible panelists. Thank you so much, Faten and Norma, for joining me for today's conversation. All right, so let's get started, shall we? We're going to jump right in because the best way to bring the P's and the C's to life is actually hear about your personal experiences. And I know, for speaking on behalf of all of the people we have online, we want the behind the scenes. We want your candor. We want your honest opinions to help guide us and think about what it is that we should think about as we are participating on boards or getting ready to be interviewed, to evaluate our opportunity to be on boards and make the biggest impact. So first, maybe I'll ask Faten first for you to start, and then maybe Norma for you to build off after her. Maybe tell us a little bit about your story, how you've been able to find your voice in the boardroom.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the introduction. It's truly an honor to be here. An interesting story. Too often when I'm invited to a board, it is usually on a topic that I need time to learn about and get comfortable with. So usually I look at the materials we are to discuss well ahead of time. I do my homework, get comfortable with the items I have in the documents. That said, I learned that each board is unique with a membership that has been there for a long while sometimes, and they tend to have their own hidden language and sometimes a code of some sort. So I found myself in something similar recently. While I was preparing for a meeting, and that was during COVID last year, I found few notes in the financials that led me to ask questions about what was that referring to and what exactly it meant, and as far as our current fiscal year was concerned. Now I realize that BMO is a sponsor for this event, and there are quite of brilliant financial minds on this call, but financials is not my cup of tea. Yet I needed to ask what this was all about, and as it made little sense to how it was presented, and considering, of course, we have a duty as a board member to make the best decision possible, I thought it was the right thing to ask. So I did. So as I asked the question, and as I did, there was this few long seconds of silence on the call. And somehow I thought, oops, I had asked the question maybe I shouldn't have asked, or worse yet, maybe that was explained thoroughly somewhere in the document and I missed it to the lack of my knowledge in the finance area. And while all these doubts are happening in this few silent moments on the call, I got a response from the chair, and he had this half a smile / smirk on his face, and he said, "Faten, you're asking dangerous questions." What it turned out to be was something historical that was dealt with long ago, and the chair went further and explained it to me. And on the side of that, I had messages that's coming through the video conference on the private chats from other board members that asking if I need more information aside from what was shared with me, along with kudos for picking up on something that never thought a newbie on the board would. So I am a marketer, I am an advertiser, and have been owning and running my own agency for the past 10 years or so. So when it gets to leadership, operations, management, etc., my voice is easily heard on these matters, but finance was not my strong point. And to pick up on an item within all the dozens of pages and documents that I went through that gave me the voice I needed to be confident on that front. So that was my little short story.
Amazing. That's a great story. I'm just thinking, I wonder how they documented in the notes of you asking the dangerous question. Good for you to have the courage to do that. Maybe Norma, over to you to give us a bit of your experience.
Well, thank you so much. And I have to say, humbled and inspired by the accomplishments of everyone on this calls today. And it's very, very, I have to say, as an older generation, watching the incredible leadership by the young female leaders, it's fantastic. And I just want to see more of that. And so kudos to all of you. And well, my board journey really on public boards is about 6 years old. And the story I wanted to share with you, where I shared my voice, goes back to around 2018, so about 3 years ago. And it all started when I was on the Med Relief Board in the cannabis sector, focused really on the medical area. And we were acquired by Aurora in one of the biggest acquisitions in the cannabis space for about $3.4 billion. And this is where Deborah, Rosati, and I met 3 years ago and became very fast friends, very much like-minded when it comes to values and principles. And so I was so this was July 2018 when I joined the Aurora board, and I was asked if I would chair nominating and governance. And I did chair nominating governance on the Med Relief board. About a month later, the Globe and Mail publishes a report, and Aurora is positioned 28 out of 100 in board games. And here I am, now the new chair, and I said, oh my goodness, this is not where I want us to be, and this is not where I want to be. And so quickly, in respect to my voice, I quickly had conversations with the chair and several members of the board, being sensitive to the fact that the board lacked independence and lacked the infrastructure because it was an entrepreneurial board, it was a new board, but we quickly needed to do an audit on our governance practices. I'm very proud to say that I led that project, and it's still going on. Even we're in our fourth year, and we've after year one, we moved from 28 out of 100 to 67 out of 100, and last year to 73 out of 100. And what I'm most pleased about is everyone. I mean, we have to talk about the benefits. What does this mean for Aurora if we improve our governance, particularly in a very, fast-growing, challenging space with a lot of unknowns? But it meant that we could and became the leader when it came to best practices in governance. So I have to say, it takes collaboration, it takes convincing. You have to look at your performance and take a deep dive and look at what needs to be improved, and you need to have everybody behind you. We didn't make it right away. We've had higher ambitions. Year one, unfortunately, didn't meet it, but we're able to improve it in year two. So that was my example of using your voice, but you need to be prepared and you need to have your arguments in place.
Oh, that's great. And I think both of you have been involved in so many different types of boards, and still, like, you're extremely active on many, many boards. What actually motivates you in choosing the one and agreeing that, yeah, that's the one that I want to be a board member for and participate? Because it's a huge commitment. So to be able to show up with your voice actively and influence like that. So maybe Faten, you want to start first. What motivates you? How do you choose?
Sure. People, the organization, and the brand, exactly in that order. And that's what gets me going to start thinking about a board. The people that are leading the organizations are the ones I usually meet with and have conversations with before I consider hopping on a board. I always timely think that I could have great ideas and great excitement about an initiative, but if the right people are not around the table, things are much tougher to deal with. And that's my first. Being able to relate to their enthusiasm for the organization, the work they are doing is, again, what gets my juices flowing. There is also a great deal of enjoyment of as Deborah explained, the characters of the people that you'll be joining on a board, having conversations and spending all these volunteer hours, in my case for the non-for-profit and government, with these special characters adds a huge piece on the decision making for the board. The second part is the organization and the work it does. What are they doing today? What are their plans for the future? How they're envisioning to get there. That gives me a sense of their strategy, and of course the leadership, and how they're envisioning this work to be and how they're taking it forward. And the last piece, which is quite important in anticipation to the work ahead of us as a marketer, is the organization's perception in the marketplace. What are its practices in the community? And again, especially in my case, in the past 10 years or so in the community, how they're perceived by one and all. It is important as the brand of an organization, what it stands for, what it is known for. These are all important aspects to get me excited about a brand. I need to be fully aware that it is also seen as a positive brand in the community that I play in. So these three pieces, basically what I think about and motivates me before I decide on hopping on a board.
That's great. Okay, people, organization, and brand for you. What about you, Norma?
Well, I would agree with Faten, and I thought about this, and I have to tell you, when I'm approached about different opportunities, the first thing to what Faten said, the people, who, I want to get to know the people, what's their background, and what, so that's very important. The CEO, the leadership, their values, their culture. I'm particularly quite active in the healthcare sector, and I love healthcare innovation, all stemming to how do we help the patient? How do we help them live better quality lives? So when the healthcare, I'm touching all sectors. And so the healthcare learning, evolving, being on a board and with an organization that's open to learning and evolving. As you mentioned, the people, and what is the long-term potential of the organization? And because we do have problems out there that need to be solved, what problem are we solving? And how can I contribute to solving that problem through different aspects, be it from my past experience in healthcare, be it with new technologies, be it with governance, nominating and governance. And at the end, it's all about, am I helping society? Am I making Canada and the communities healthier places? So that's what drives me in making my choices.
Any tips on how you do the research? Anything unique that people wouldn't think about to get to know the people in the organization before you sign up?
Well, LinkedIn is always very good. And people who know the certain people, and having some conversations and almost a bit of background checking. I'm not saying I've made my mistakes as well, where you had, from past experience, had a view of someone's leadership, but lost track and things changed over a period of time. So we really have to do good due diligence.
And also, if I can add, I mean, as Norma is saying, these are all great pieces, but Deborah in her presentation summed up a lot of what we're talking about in few keywords, and one of them is chemistry. So meeting with them and meeting with several board members before you even hop in, while everything looks perfect on paper and on background check, it's also very important, because you need to find this chemistry. You need to find this place that you feel you truly can contribute and add to the conversation and make a difference in that. And that would only comes when you really follow your guts, that these are the right people that I'd be working with or along with in my term in the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I think it's incredible too, of just when you do your searches online, just what will come up, right? We're like going beyond the public information into the news and the review sites to see what's the latest, to your point, Norman, versus what you might know about a person or an organization from the past. Okay, so let's switch gears from, we talked about stories from how you found your voice. Maybe let's talk about the power of influence. I think that's a powerful one that women can be more self-conscious about at the boardroom table, even the management table for that matter, of really influencing others. So maybe Norma, I'll start with you this time around on just some stories or some examples you can share with us.
Well, I just want to stress what Deborah said. I mean, listen and learn. Listening is so important. Active listening. It makes me think back to when I was a sales manager and a sales rep out in the field. You're teaching, the key of active listening, and that's so important throughout whatever we do. But that continues, and the learning part. The more you learn, and it's part of building the relationship. The more you learn, and the more you get to know people and have genuine interest in others and their career and their aspirations and their what motivates them, I think those two things together, and it builds chemistry, finding commonality with someone, because we're all connected in different ways. So it's finding the ways we're connected and aligning values that can build with an organization, being a director or whatever we're doing. So that, I think, number one is demonstrate that respect, demonstrate that interest, demonstrate, and for me, what I really enjoy is helping others and connecting others. So I do my best. I'm not 100% there, but I do my best to try and connect people, to help people. And so that builds credibility. I ask for insights. I'll ask for, sometimes, I mean, we're all imperfect individuals. We're always on the road of learning. And so going to the experts and learning from others, I think, is very important. And that helps also build, because I think we're all vulnerable, and be open to that vulnerability. And something I wanted to share, and I learned this from one of my chairs, particularly influencing in the boardroom. And he shared with me, one of the things that he shares with the directors is to use the think principle. And I said, okay, tell me more about that. And he said, the think principle is T for, is your thought thoughtful? Is it a thoughtful comment in the boardroom? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Because in a boardroom, sometimes it can be inspiring, because we often forget management works very hard and are very emotionally connected to what's being presented. And a director can certainly deflate that enthusiasm sometimes. So what we're saying, is it inspiring? Is it needed? And going back to Deborah's point earlier too, sometimes we don't have to say anything because it's being said elsewhere. And then finally, is it kind? So I try to follow that. I think it's very helpful in the boardroom when you're looking for guidance to help build your influence. I'll stop there. There's certainly more I could add, but I'll pass it on to Faten.
I love that. I actually, and especially the INK part of it, because so many people stop at the T, the thoughtful component, but is it actually needed? Is your question really needed within the context of the board conversation of what we're trying to achieve, and also the conversation itself? So that's great. I'm going to remember, think too. Faten, what about you?
Norma,
influence. Give me your story of influence.
Yeah, well, Norma, you covered, you folks covered quite a bit of it. But, if I can add one or two, I think sometimes people are joining a board or being around a table again, and we're looking at them as they're filling a gap in terms of a competency that we require on the table. But there is, again, as Deborah just presented, it's amazing, as she has been reading my mind in all this presentation, and it's fascinating. So there is also the soft skill or this passion that not necessarily in the resume, but could add a huge deal to the experience for the board member and for the board and for the organization. So helping people finding what they want to do aside from the skill or the competency, the technical competency that they can provide is something that I always love to have a hand in, or be those ears that listening and allowing not allowing or facilitating the conversation in some sort. The second thing is give a voice to those who have a quieter voice on the table, or not as loud when it's not their cup of tea. The same as I spoke about my example of finance, and when I was in the finance committee, if it wasn't for the brilliant chair of that committee, probably I would be quiet most of the time. But he has given me that voice to ask what I could have thought as dumb questions, or maybe questions shouldn't be asked, but empowered me to ask that and feel comfortable around certain topics. So these, I think, are a couple of thoughts I could add to Norma.
Those are great. Those are great thoughts. We always think it's the big, the big way to influence. What's the big thought or the big question that you had to really influence the table? But sometimes the smallest soft skill can have the most profound impact of influence, and you might not even realize it. So I think that's an incredible thought and compliment to what Norma said. Maybe just building off of that for a second before I leave this question, anything you've done differently in a virtual world when you think about influencing, or in the board conversations you've been part of as we've all gone virtual?
I think humor is really important. I think we go on and we're, sometimes it's pretty stuffy. And so humor, having fun, enjoying yourself, I think we have to put more of that in there, show interest in others. I know we talk about the weather a lot, but there's a lot more than the weather. And and I've had the pleasure with one of my boards where we had an evening where the management did a great job sending funny gifts to the directors and put an attachment of why they received that gift. So again, it's being creative around the virtual world. So I think, and it's like using icebreakers when we facilitate different sessions when we're together. So I think we need to put a little bit more creativity in the process.
That's great. What about you, Faten?
Well, in the virtual world, aside from this wonderful example, Norma, I truly enjoyed the side chat conversations where we can give pointers to each other or comment without interrupting the entire meeting. So that just created, because typically in the traditional way of meeting, we're going to the boardroom, we're all around this large table, and we have the agenda that we're going through, and there isn't a chance for us to have side conversations or additional comments between one or two or three members. So this virtually was facilitated, and I really enjoyed that. The feedback we give to colleagues, the additional piece of information that we share that is not shared. So that, I think that was nice virtually.
That's great. Okay, let's talk emotional intelligence now. What would you say is your superpower, Faten, when it comes to emotional intelligence?
It's my superpower.
Come on, don't be shy. Don't be shy. Give it to us. What's your superpower? Okay,
my superpower, if I can call it that, I think it would be my personality and what I have to share. I'm known that I'm not the loudest in the room. And in fact, sometimes I'm the quietest, the quieter person in the room. But I don't shy away from sharing my perspective when the chance is there, and when it is completely relevant and I feel that I'm adding something to the conversation. I am, for one, that very approachable, and that makes a lot of conversations really easy, and difficult conversations very easy. So I was told my superpower is my caring personality, good listener, but in the meantime, I have this other side of me, which is fearless and gets things done, and fixer, for for lack of better words. And that puts me in a great place. So I listen well, I run the conversation well, and I act on it really well.
Those are great superpowers. Yeah. Norma, what about you?
Well, I wouldn't call it a superpower, but I would call it, what do I enjoy? And I really enjoy helping other people. I get a lot of satisfaction and personal gratification out of listening and learning and helping. And if I can, I do what I can, growing, moving things forward. I think it's this thing of movement. And what inspires me is sometimes my kids won't even listen to me, right? So so it's when actually someone's open to your thoughts and your experience, you sort of say, okay. But no, for me, I go back to my days when I was vice president in the pharma world. My biggest reward was seeing the people in my team be successful and achieve what they never thought they could achieve. So, and I don't think it's changed. It still remained the same, and it's the same in the boardroom. It's really, and I love cheerleading the management team when they achieve things, and I'll push. I'm a bit of a push, but at the same time, I'm the biggest cheerleader on the sidelines. So I'll stop there.
Amazing. You're both extremely modest, but I believe you have incredible superpowers, and especially as women, like encouraging others, being the soft but thoughtful voice, propping people up, inspiring them, encouraging them. There are superpowers that are underrated that we don't talk about enough. So kudos to both of you. Let's talk competencies now. So down into one of the hard skills that Deborah called out for all of us. When you think about your competencies, what is it that you bring to a board? And then how has that maybe expanded over time as you've been involved in more boards or different boards, and how you think about that? So maybe Norma, you first.
Well, it's a very good question. I would say my competency has, first of all, have evolved. And even if you were to say, your experience as a director, I would never say I'm a highly experienced director. I'm maybe not a novice, but I'm on the road. I'm in the intermediate stage as a director. And what do I bring? Where am I today compared to when I started? I mean, I would say I'm a versatile healthcare leader who touches everything, because I'm in long-term care, I'm in home care, I'm in digital health, EAP, mental health. The breadth of what I touch, they're not necessarily in the same fields, but they're all interconnected. And then again, I'm working with the Ministry of Health and working with National Research Council. So if you look at the total environment and all the different stakeholders, it's all connected. So I bring that level of competency of a completeness in this field. My background, sales and marketing and human resources. And I would say where I have a lot of fun is growing businesses, transforming businesses, like M&A type of transaction, nonprofit. Obviously, I'm very connected to, for example, cystic fibrosis. My nephew has CF, and so very passionate. And even when my days at CF Canada, it's all about, I love novelty. I love innovation. So I bring that mindset. And finally, very forward thinking. I know where we are today, but I'm looking 10 years from now. What will this landscape look like 10 years from now? And I sometimes at the boardroom table, they don't want to hear me ask that question, but I come prepared with statistics on what's it going to look like in 2031 based on this particular area. So it goes back to being prepared and asking some of those questions that help management think forward. So I'll stop there.
That's great. I think the forward thinking too is so key as a board member to push and challenge there. And forward thinking is becoming shorter and shorter as so much change happens faster of how far out that might be with the statistics I'm sure that you're bringing each time. Fatanah, what about you? Competencies.
Competencies.
And how maybe have they changed? Maybe you can add that too.
Sorry, could you repeat that, Lisa?
So competencies that you bring, but then how that may have changed over time and with different boards.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously it has been a journey, and I am evolving as I learn and as I grow. So there is the technical competencies, and I'm now learning all Deborah's terminologies that I had. So all these are in the resume and in our LinkedIn profile, and they are there. And I pride myself with a great deal of exposure across sectors and industries over the years, and a mix that is unique between the marketing world, advertising, the technical, and the arts. And it's a combination, as I was told and as I experienced, that is rare to find in one person to offer. But aside from all these technical competencies, which I'm not downplaying, they have helped me a great deal in my career, is the most important one that I feel that I bring to a board is a true recognition of diversity, inclusion, and equity that we absolutely need on our boards in this time and age. As a marketer, as an agency person, and a diverse woman with a very diverse team that reaches over 140 some countries for our clients, while I've been having the pleasure to travel globally to meet those clients and be able to deal in different settings and deliver in different climates, I have a unique sense of the need to bring a diverse set of ideas around the table. And that's, to me, is my greatest competency that I can bring in this time and age.
That's an incredible competency, and one every single board table needs, especially right now more than ever. And maybe that gets me to my last question. We've got 2 minutes left on the clock for us, which maybe just inspire us all as an audience with an example, one of your examples of courage. What did it take from a courage perspective around the board table for you that you have served on? Maybe Fatanah, you and first, and then Norma, we will close out with you.
Sorry, that was me or Norma?
You. Yep.
Oh,
go for it.
All right.
Sorry, talking too fast.
Wow. Okay. Example of courage.
Yeah. Inspire us.
All right. I had a great, a good example that recently just happened to me. As a marketer and as an advertising and agency owner, I have a great deal of respect, generally speaking, to folks that sit around the table that are experienced lawyers, experienced CPAs that give their perspectives and their opinions about what being provided to us by vendors and such. And most recently, there was this example where I was evaluating work for a vendor that in the same space like myself, so could be perceived as a competitor for what I can offer. And as I try to give my 2 cents, and I'm perhaps the only one around the table that this is my day job and what I do day in, day out. So I was the most experienced in that field. I could not pass a very poor quality for work and very poor industry practices where I see it at the worst level, and we're paying quite handsomely for, and just worry about the perceived conflict of interest if I spoke up and said that was terrible work that we're receiving, and it's not to what we're paying for. So had a chat with the chair, encouraged me if I'm comfortable to share it with the board. And I was comfortable to share it with the board. And the way I thought about it, if a lawyer is able to comment in legal work that we're receiving, or CPA is okay to comment and audit other work and give their 2 cents, the same applies for myself, even though it's not one of the conventional or traditional things that being brought on the board. And I have done so, and I was brave about it, and I was comfortable with it, and I think it was a great thing to do. And it took quite a bit of courage. Like it took me quite a bit to have it in me to go around the table and say that shouldn't be the way it is done for these reasons, and be able to educate my colleagues and share the knowledge about what is it that they should expect in return.
That's a great example. Norma, what about you?
I'll close by saying, and this is something that I continue to learn, and I think it's a key element of being a director, is use your best judgment. You have that gut, that sixth sense, use your judgment. And the example I'll share is, there was a situation where I'm on the HR committee, and the HR committee is asked to approve compensation for certain executives. And I was the only one who didn't approve the compensation for certain of the executives, because I saw the problems associated with making that approval down the road, which I shared. And nevertheless, it went through but I had it on the records that my vote was a negative vote, and it went through. But the problems that I saw, I'm not saying anything, but what I had thought could be a risk was a risk. So again, it's important that we're not afraid to share our opinion and our voice and use our judgment.
So good, such great examples. So 2 more C's, right? Walking the line of what you might perceive as a conflict of interest, but not. And then the other one, compensation. Those are 2 huge topics that take courage, and great examples. I could go on, and we could still keep chatting for another 30 minutes. I want to thank you both. You have inspired me. You've inspired lots of people in the chat. Everyone is really appreciating your authenticity and your comments today in today's event. So thank you very much. And at this point, I'm going to hand things over to Sherry to close us out and transition us to the breakouts. Thanks, Norma. Thanks, Faten.
Thank you.
Sherry, over to you.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Appreciate it. I couldn't say it any better than how you did. Lisa, I was sitting here making notes, thinking about all of the incredible comments and conversation that you just had. So first, let me just thank Deborah too. The way that you laid out those 4 P's and 4 C's, I think was a great foundation for the conversation. And Lisa, for you, as usual, my favorite partner with BMO for Women, great questions and great energy around that. Faten and Norma, I made some really good notes about just speaking up and adding value and being who you are and bringing that to the table. So thank you for that. And think, I wrote down think, I love that one. I think there was some comments about that in the chat room as well. So appreciate that. So we have great news now. We will be going into breakout rooms for the remainder of the event today. And so you will be assigned a breakout group facilitated by one of our expert panelists that you just heard from, or from Anar or Poonam, who are also both distinguished and experienced corporate directors and actually previous honorees of our BMO Celebrating Women on Boards. So they will be able to answer any questions you might have at this point, share their own experiences about their board journey, and just allow this conversation to continue. So please click OK when it goes to the breakout room. If you have any technical difficulties, you can press the Ask for Help button and someone will help you. We will not be coming back to this main group again. So with that, I just want to really say thank you to everyone that attended today, all of our folks on the call. We appreciate it, and enjoy the breakout rooms and the breakout discussions. Thank you.